You've been sober for 10 years. Why can't you just have one drink? This question was recently asked to a colleague of mine, a professional happiness and sober coach who has been alcohol free for a decade. Someone implied that after 10 years, he should have the willpower to control his drinking. Here's the problem: for some people, just one is never just one. I've been in long term recovery for nearly 34 years, and I've seen this reality play out time and time again. Bodies are different. And for those with alcohol use disorder, their brain and body don't suddenly reset after years of sobriety. Let's break down why. So, some people can't drink again, and that's due to the myth of control. A common misconception is that after years of sobriety, you should be strong enough to drink in moderation. But for some, control isn't an option. Their brain chemistry and body response doesn't change even after a decade, even after decades. Example: think about smoking. Some people smoke their whole lives and never get cancer. Others, like my mom, develop smoking related cancers and it takes their life. Why? Because some bodies are predisposed to certain outcomes. It's the same with alcohol use disorder and other addiction. Some people are wired to experience an amplified effect from alcohol, which increases their risk of cravings, loss of control, and return to drinking. There are six predisposition factors. If you have one or more of these risk factors, your body may process alcohol in a way that is different than others. One, genetics and heredity. More than just family history, alcohol use disorder has a strong genetic component. But it's not just about whether someone in your family drank heavily, it's about inherited brain chemistry. Some people inherit a heightened dopamine response to alcohol, making drinking more pleasurable and reinforcing from the start. Others have a weaker stress response system, making them more likely to use alcohol as a coping mechanism. Certain genetic profiles make people more resistant to the negative effects of alcohol, like hangovers, which can lead to heavier use over time. If multiple generations have struggled with alcohol or addiction, it's likely due to shared biological vulnerabilities rather than just learned behavior. Bottom line: if alcohol feels different to you than it does to others, if you experience stronger cravings, a greater pull to drink, or difficulty stopping once you start, your genetics may be playing a major role. The next one is co occurring mental health disorders. Alcohol as a way to manage symptoms, other substances as well. Many people don't drink just to have fun, they drink to cope. Anxiety and panic disorders, alcohol provides temporary relief from overactive nervous system responses, making it feel like a fast acting solution to stress. Depression, alcohol stimulates dopamine in the short term, but ultimately worsens depression by disrupting serotonin and mood regulation. ADHD, many people with ADHD drink to slow down racing thoughts, enhance focus in social situations, or combat restlessness. PTSD and trauma. Alcohol dulls the emotional pain, creating a cycle of self medication that reinforces dependence. The bottom line is, if alcohol has ever felt like it's helping you to function, that's a warning sign that it's compensating for an underlying condition and making it worse in the long run. The third factor is early exposure and medical trauma. So, early experiences shape the brain. The earlier a person is exposed to substances or behaviors, the more permanently their brain is shaped by them. Teenage drinking and early use. The adolescent brain is still developing, and early use disrupts the prefrontal cortex, responsible for impulse control and decision making. Prescription medications and painkillers. If someone's first exposure to an altered state was through these or anesthesia, their brain may have associated substance use with relief and safety early on. Medical trauma at any age, repeated surgeries, an accident, chronic illness, or hospitalization can lead to dysregulated nervous systems. If substances provide relief from chronic pain, anxiety, or loss of control, the brain links them with comfort and survival. Bottom line, if your first experiences with substances were before adulthood or medically induced, your brain may be wired to seek external regulation, making alcohol feel more necessary than it is for others. The fourth factor is conditioning and learned behavior. So, alcohol as the go to response to life. While genetics and biology play a role, so does repeated exposure and conditioning. Some people grow up in families or cultures where drinking is the norm for every situation, whether it's stress, grief, celebration, or just daily life. Over time, they don't just see alcohol as an option, they train their body and brain to expect it as the default response to any emotional state. The brain builds neural pathways that reinforce drinking in specific situations. For example, I had a hard day, I need a drink, or I'm celebrating, time for a party. Bottom line is if you've trained your brain to associate alcohol with stress relief, reward, or social belonging, it becomes a conditioned response, one that's difficult to unlearn without intentional and mindful effort. The next predisposing factor is trauma and brain changes. So, trauma increases the risk for addiction because it physically changes the brain, making alcohol and other substances feel more necessary for self regulation. It creates a fight or flight on overdrive. If someone experiences trauma, especially in childhood, their brain becomes hypervigilant, always scanning for threats. Alcohol temporarily calms this overactive response. Trauma can also create a dysregulated stress response. It disrupts cortisol levels, making some people feel constantly anxious, on edge, or even emotionally numb. Alcohol artificially balances this. Dopamine system impairment. Trauma survivors often have lower baseline dopamine levels, which means alcohol feels more rewarding and relieving than it does for others. The bottom line on this one is if past trauma has shaped your brain's stress and reward systems, alcohol may feel like the only way to experience relief, but in reality, it deepens the cycle of dependence. The next one is reward insufficiency and high risk drive. Chasing the high to feel normal. Some people are biologically wired to need more stimulation to feel normal. Low dopamine sensitivity can be a factor. Some people have a naturally lower dopamine baseline, meaning they need stronger stimulation to feel pleasure, excitement, or motivation. Thrill seeking and risk taking. Those with novelty seeking traits may feel bored, restless, or unsatisfied unless they're engaging in high stimulation activities, including substance use. So, impulse control deficits. Some people have difficulty delaying gratification, making it harder to say just one and to stop. The bottom line in this category is if you've ever felt like you needed bigger, riskier, or more intense experiences just to feel something or feel engaged, you may be prone to chasing alcohol's effects harder than others do. So, the final takeaway is this isn't about willpower, it's about science. If you recognize one or more of these factors in yourself or somebody you love, it's not about a personal weakness. It's about how your body and brain respond to alcohol. This is why just one isn't possible for some people. This is why willpower alone doesn't work. And this is why understanding your personal risk factors is key to long term sobriety. So, drop a comment if any of this resonates with you, if you'd like to have a discussion. You can check out my other videos where I break down these factors in more detail. Um, so, tying this back to willpower one more time, I just made a video on why willpower doesn't work when it comes to alcohol cravings. And this is exactly why. If your body is wired for an amplified response, no amount of discipline will make just one a safe choice. And that's not a moral failure, it's biology and science. So, what can you do? Understand your personal risk factors, develop strategies to protect your sobriety, and surround yourself with people who get it. Drop a comment. Have you experienced this? Do you observe this? Do you relate to feeling an amplified response to alcohol? Let's talk about it. For more resources and videos, I have an entire series breaking down each of these risk factors. There will be links in the description. Check out my latest video on willpower and like, follow, and subscribe. All the good things for more science based content on alcohol recovery and executive stress.